everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. We are so excited today to bring you a special episode, a bonus episode, where we are introducing you to a new podcast that I think you're really going to enjoy. And we're talking about rom-coms for guys. This is very exciting. And who better to have with us to talk about rom-coms for guys than the host of the Rom-Com Gents podcast. We have Ryan and Kelly here, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We love being here.
Yeah, this is so exciting. So since this is your first time here on the podcast, why don't you introduce yourself? And let's talk a little bit about how you started your podcast. Why don't you start, Ryan?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I'm Ryan. Both Kelly and I live in Portland. I feel like introducing myself, it's kind of like I have to introduce like my best friend, and it's like that's part of the biography is like I've known Kelly since college, so we've just been kind of doing everything together. So we both are filmmakers here in Portland. We've written a film together. It's called Emily. You can watch it on Amazon Prime if you want. And you know, we started this podcast a year ago, and it was before the pandemic we thought of it, but it's
I think we actually started recording it in 2019.
Yeah,
but we had no idea how to schedule ourselves because I'm a freelancer and you have a day job.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where we like to do stuff, we like to make stuff, but you know, making films is expensive, and it's not like something you can just go out and do. But podcasting is free; you can just go out and do it. So this was a good way to get a creative outlet for us. So you say words now, Kelly.
Yeah, I don't know. Our meet cute was in a film class, which was really cool. So
very appropriate.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I remember Ryan first started getting into rom-coms right after we met, and so that became a burgeoning part of our friendship where it was like, hey, do you want to come over? It's Friday night. We're a couple of college kids who aren't cool enough to be invited to a party tonight. So do you want to watch a rom-com?
Yeah, something
that's kind of how it started.
I think Sleepless in Seattle was our very first rom-com together.
Yeah. That's
that
us.
Is so cute. I love that so much. I mean, and that movie, it seems like the perfect one to, because it's all about like fortuitous kind of how people are meant to be together and meeting and everything kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of fate in our relationship.
Seems like a good choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So did you both grow up in the Portland area?
No, I actually, don't tell anybody, was born in Southern California. And I ended up living in Spokane and going to school there, which is where we met. But you were born near here, weren't you?
I was born in Salem, Oregon. Then I moved up to the suburbs of Seattle when I was a kid, and then moved to Spokane for college. We both went to Whitworth University, which is a teeny tiny Christian college in the heart of the inland Northwest.
That's a good way to put it. And then we moved here like 11 years ago.
Yeah, and Portland was like, at that time, the height of popularity, because it was like Portlandia was like the big show.
Leverage
was shooting here, and it was just like, it was a city that wasn't Seattle, but it wasn't super far because we knew we didn't want to stay
Vancouver.
In Spokane. Yeah, and so like, let's go to Portland. It's a
and we didn't
cool
have
place.
to pay LA or San Francisco prices at the time.
Yeah, now
now it's really expensive.
So Ryan, have you always been a fan of rom-coms, or did you just sort of have a new appreciation for them?
Well, when I was in college, I was very pretentious, and I'm glad Kelly stuck it out with me because
you're welcome.
I was just
most of us were.
Yeah, I was, watching, like, I was in independent study with the only film professor there, and he was making me watch a movie a night, and
you're like, what's the new Ernst Lubitz?
Yeah, and there's always these high art films, anything and everything the Criterion Collection would publish, and I was really enjoying it. But I think my first, like, crossover film that was like both literate but also showed that rom-coms could be fun was When Harry Met Sally. And it's just you can't get, it's a classy rom-com, and it's an artful film, but it also is a genre film. And I was like, wait, are rom-coms good? And I just kind of like slowly pivoted towards other artful rom-coms like Notting Hill, but then I got towards some more genre ific ones, like some J-Lo ones, some Jennifer Aniston ones. It was like, oh, these can just be fun. These can just be fun movies. And so by the time I got near the end of my college career, that was just my movie I needed to relax to, was not an artful movie.
Yeah, I think they are very, very relaxing. And I really do miss that whole era of like late 90s, early 2000s when you had your Queens of RomComs, your Sandra, your Reese,
Sandra.
your J-Lo. You could count on them each pretty much most years having one and looking forward to it. Now it's very rare that you get certainly a theatrically released rom-com, and maybe part of that is because of Hallmark, because and Netflix, because there are so many that are made for those services. But I definitely like Julia Roberts. I miss those so much.
Okay,
I would love to have those back.
You brought up J-Lo. Why doesn't Julia Roberts have like a J-Rob? Or is it just too masculine to have Rob as the last name?
I mean, there's M-Rob too, right? M-Rob, Emma Roberts, Julia Roberts, the Roberts cinematic universe. There's got to be something.
Now, maybe the Roberts name cannot be sullied by like, a nickname.
J-Lo's pretty solid nickname. Yeah. I wish I could have a solid nickname like that.
Maybe there's not as many Julias as there are Jennifers.
That's
so you need to kind of like. Yep. There's because there's Jennifer Garner and I don't know, a bunch of other ones, and so maybe that's why. I don't know.
It's I would love to be a part of it.
Obviously don't
Thanks. I ask the deep questions on this podcast.
Yeah. You don't need a deep nickname for Reese because obviously there's just not that many other Reeses.
There's just one Reese. Reese could drop the Witherspoon.
Wait, are you guys talking about
just be Reese?
Are you talking about the spoon right now?
Without her spoon, with her spoon, no spoon necessary.
Right. Well, so what do you think is sort of the barrier in keeping a lot of men from getting into romantic comedies? I mean, we're going to talk about some ones that have a lot of entries for, sort of a more masculine viewpoint. And I mean, do you think it's just been so like beat into our heads that these are for women, these are chick flicks, and people just don't want to kind of dive into that? Or I don't know, you think there's anything else going on there?
Do you want to answer first?
Yeah. So the term chick flicks is something that we try like to keep our hands out of on our podcast for some reason, because it's just like we're like the whole point of our podcast is saying like, we want guys to be able to appreciate this as well as like everybody. Like these movies are kind of for everybody. And as I think as young people, I can only speak from my experience, but as a young man, there was a lot of uses of the word for, like this is for girls or this is for boys. And so at least when I was younger, like if I was watching Anne of Green Gables or like a Julia Roberts movie, my mom would be like watching them with me. But if I was trying to get my friends to watch it, it's like, that is a girl's specific movie. And so at least in our culture from a young age, most of the men around me were like pointed away from movies like that. And it was more like an adult directive in a weird way.
Yeah. That's been my big thing growing up. I talk about it a lot in a lot of episodes where certain movies will come up and be like, I really enjoyed this movie, but I was always embarrassed to like this movie because I felt culturally I wasn't allowed to. And I feel like, I think it's our responsibility for Kelly and me to like destroy this kind of like directive of how men should think and feel in a specific way. It's like men should be able to watch stories with sensitivity and softness and warmth and be able to enjoy it. And they shouldn't be embarrassed to like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Not only like it, but like, I think it really does good to have men very specifically watch movies that were made with female hands and with women in mind, because like that is a good way for us to get to know each other.
My big one, I think probably one of the most valuable ones that I got into thanks to my wife was all of Gilmore Girls.
Yes, Gilmore Girls is our favorite.
And
it's a good gateway.
Learning about what Rory Gilmore was interested in, like, made me kind of understand retroactively what the girls I was interested in high school, what they were thinking, you know, because like Jess, I have such problems with Jess on the show, and Sarah, my wife, is always there to be like, look, you know, maybe Jess isn't the best thing for her, but you got to understand why Rory's interested in Jess. And I'm just like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And like the show really helps you understand a perspective, and you would never get that perspective from like Michael Bay's Transformers. You're not going to get that.
What the only perspectives you're going to get?
I'm just thinking of male dominant art in the early 2000. You're either going to go watch Gilmore Girls or Transformers. It was a very bad time.
Yeah, that won't appear on any of our lists. Nevertheless. I really appreciate you saying that, because that's one thing I liked about your show, is because there is a lot of shows, both podcasts and YouTube channels, that the whole shtick is like dudes watching girly stuff, and isn't that hilarious?
Right.
And you know, like we're watching a Hallmark movie, or we're watching a Barbie movie, or Twilight, or whatever it might be, and isn't that funny? And it just always drives me crazy, and it makes me kind of crazy too, because it's so successful, and I'm like, haven't we moved on beyond this? I mean, because if you had the opposite, and you had a couple girls like making commentary about kind of dude stuff, like watching Ghostbusters or Fast and the Furious or Marvel movies or DC, that kind of thing, then you would get death threats. You would be hated. It would not be like, oh, that's so hilarious, what a joke. And it makes me kind of crazy. And so I really appreciated when I listened to your show, because honestly, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, another one of these. I first saw it, and then I actually listened to it, and I was like, these guys really love this. They are being so respectful, and it's not a joke, it's not a bit.
We love these movies.
Yeah. It is a sincere love, and I think that's why I've never been one to engage in like hate watching or like liking something ironically. And there's some things like, you know, Kelly made me watch A Christmas Prince on Netflix, and I think A Christmas Prince doesn't take itself too seriously either. So I think it kind of wants to be laughed at as well as laughed with.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think our love of all rom-coms is sincere, and we're probably extra critical towards the genre because it hasn't usually been put through its paces as a genre, because it's just been kind of some silly, girls don't really care about it. Like executives just don't treat the genre with seriousness. But if you like actually look at the art form of the genre of the rom-com, it's like, no, it'll stand up to criticism. And we're kind of, we're, it's called A Gentleman's Guide to Rom-Coms. We want it to be a curated thing where it's like, look, maybe To All the Boys, the first one, maybe it's not the best one, but like, we're getting into these films and there's quality to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's always been my goal as a film critic in the Hallmark space, is to bring critical analysis to this space. And when we were very first starting, it was about maybe 6 months or so into the podcast, I had critic William Bibiani on, and he said that that if these films aren't allowed to have any critical analysis, then they can kind of become this thing that there's no, that's kind of almost this sort of out of control thing. And I think that any art form needs critical analysis to help it to become as good as it can possibly be. And so people might say, oh, well, you're being too critical, they're just Hallmark movies. And I'm like, I know they're just Hallmark movies, and I'm judging them as Hallmark movies, but I want them to be good Hallmark movies. And I'm not judging them versus, I don't know, your Oscar fare or your whatever, but I want them to be the best of this genre that they can be. And so I think it's really important to bring critical analysis, both good and both positive and negative, and to take these seriously and have a good time and try to have fun and just all those dynamics. But that's very important to me. And that's very important to me as far as all the hosts of my podcast, is that they all feel comfortable expressing their opinions and talking it out. And
I think the films do need to be still graded on a curve. You can't compare a Netflix rom-com to like Sony Pictures Classics, Oscar hopeful of the year. It's not fair.
Yeah.
This is a discussion that we get into a lot, like when we watched Set It Up, for instance, which is a Netflix original.
Yeah.
I was kind of holding it to a standard that, like, if Netflix is saying we can compete for Oscars, I'm often the one that's being like just a little bit more critical. Like, I work in the film industry, and sometimes I'm just like, you guys could have done more with your budget. And Ryan always has to bring me down to earth and be like, it's okay. Put the sword away. Put the sword. Like, it's okay.
The same year that, Martin Scorsese's got The Irishman in release, and then they've got Set It Up.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're both Netflix. I'm like, it's different departments. Like, that's the rom-com department. They don't have Martin Scorsese's money.
But at the same time, we're trying to hold these to a standard.
Yeah.
And so like, this is the discussion we get in a lot. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's true. And people might say that's not fair, but it's the reality is that if I go to watch a movie that I know is for toddlers, a Winnie the Pooh movie or a Barney movie or something like that, or an Elmo movie, I'm not looking at that the same as when I go see a Scorsese movie or a Tarantino movie or whatever. Like, I'm looking at it through a different lens.
There's a lot less blood. So
yeah, less blood. And so I think it's the same here. So I think that's really great. And I really loved your show. I think you're doing a great thing over there.
Oh, thank
you.
So
I'm hoping people will kind of find you, and hopefully we'll get you to do a Hallmark movie one of these days.
Yeah.
That would be really fun.
I mean, part of the thing about Hallmark is we're not sure where to jump in because there's just so many films out there. So we'll need your help to dive in.
I can be your guide.
Yeah.
and if you're listening and you have suggestions of where they should start or what they should do, put it in the comments section.
Yeah.
Or follow them on social media, and we would love that. So let's dive into our list. So we each created a list of top 5 or 5 rom-coms that we think are really good for guys, or we think that guys will like. And obviously men are incredibly different, but nevertheless.
These are gateway movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, gateway movies. That's right. And mine, I said top 5, but mine's not really a top 5. It's more just 5. So there's not like a
same
high
for us.
ranking here. So why don't you start, Ryan, and say your number 5?
Okay, my number 5
on your list
is 500 Days of Summer. 500 Days of Summer is my 5th film.
Yeah.
Ryan's a new dad, so
if
you cringed at the dad joke, it's right up his alley right now.
Joke. So 500 Days of Summer is kind of a story told out of order, where we're watching a relationship between Tom and Summer that starts out as an office flirtation and then starts to get serious, but we kind of watch the story out of order, and we kind of get the breakup first, and then we figure out how they met, and then get other times in the relationship. It's kind of Annie Hall in its structure, and it's probably the most personal film for me that kind of made me understand how I view not women in general, but like potential romantic interests. And the whole thing about that movie is Tom isn't really listening to Summer when her whole character thing is that she's not looking to be in a relationship, and he is, and he just kind of persuades her and pushes her into it. And the relationship never totally succeeds because of that flaw that Tom has. And it kind of made me realize, like, I idealize women the way that he does. And it kind of made me kind of, reevaluate how I approach romance and how I approach relationships. And so it was a really important film for me.
Mm-hmm. I would
really enjoy
you
it
bring
too.
it up every episode almost.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. Especially, I love the expectations versus reality
Classic
section.
Yeah.
I think that is so good. That is so true to life. How many times do we kind of go into something with these expectations, and then that kind of ruins it? And a lot of people have said, "Oh, well, she's the kind of good one in the relationship, and he's the not as good one in the relationship." Not that you can really play sides, I guess, but I don't know if I really agree with that, because she is not very honest with him as far as inviting him to her engagement party. I mean, come on. And
that's why it's so heartbreaking.
I know. Like, she knows this human, right? Like,
Mhm.
she was in a relationship with him. She had to known that would not be. She's at the very least pretty clueless, I think.
Yeah.
If not unkind. And and he is definitely too, like you were saying, kind of forcing this relationship. I get that, but I don't give her a pass either, personally.
Almost to a person, it's split down the gender line whether you like Summer or don't. Because I remember in college, like watching this movie and be like, "Hey, we can watch 500 Days of Summer. It's on my shelf. It's one of the 5 DVDs I own." And there was no woman in the room who was like, "Summer, I hate her. She's the worst." And this was also the moment where like we really started as a culture talking about the Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Really made us reevaluate the
That's true.
idolization of it.
Yeah.
Which was an important conversation we needed to have. It was a cultural intervention.
All right.
That's very true. All right, Kelly, do you want to do your number, your fifth?
Okay. I'm going to start. I think rather than like what is number 5 on my list, I'm going to kind of go in chronological order.
That's good. Okay. I like that.
Okay, that's a good
especially
idea.
because my earliest one is the biggest edge case. I'm going with Groundhog's Day, or Groundhog Day. There are not multiple groundhogs on this day, I don't think. Now
it's the same one repeated over and over again.
That would be a good poster.
Same groundhog.
Groundhog's Day and the possessive apostrophe is crossed out. It's like, no, there are multiple days. It's the same one over and over again.
So this movie is barely, I mean, it is a rom-com in and of that. Like the main goal of Bill Murray's character is to woo
Andy McDowell.
And this is actually one of my favorite movies with Andie MacDowell. She seemed to got pigeonholed in this like cool girl next door like role after this, but I really love her in it. And this movie I think is a really good gateway movie for guys because I mean, as you'll see in most of mine and Ryan's films that we have, they have a male lead in them, but I think a lot of our movies also have like kind of a Venn diagram with other genres. And this one definitely has like a fantasy element to it because Bill Murray just has to do this day over and over again. And he's a total butthead at the beginning of this movie. He is the person you least want to hang out with. And as a filmmaker, like when you've got it's Chris Elliott, right?
Yeah.
Is his buddy in that movie. And he's like the whole time he's like prima donna. And there have been so many camera guys I know that like just like behind the scenes, they're just like, oh man, I hate working with actors like this. And so it gives me a lot of joy as a filmmaker. But this movie shows you this character of Bill Murray and just kind of shows his evolution from beginning to end. I don't know if another character has had to take like somebody's calculated out that he might have been in there for over 81 years or something, just reliving this day over and over again. But like being able to, as a guy, see what it takes for like an asshole to become kind of a good guy and see what it's like to live for other people rather than himself, I think is an important lesson. And that's why I like that.
Yeah.
film.
His first Groundhog Day, he was completely selfish. His last Groundhog Day, he was completely selfless.
Yeah.
Right. And also, I think it's actually funny. I think one of the problems that sometimes rom-coms get is they are a little light on the com part, you know, not getting enough of the comedy. And so, whereas Groundhog Day is legitimately hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
One of the best. I mean,
directed by Harold Ramis.
All Bill Murray films are the best Bill Murray films, but, you know, easily a top 5 Bill Murray film.
Yeah. And if you want a surprise, the Broadway musical, you wouldn't think like, how could you make a Broadway musical off Groundhog Day? It's actually really funny.
Really?
Oh, really?
It's actually really, it's really charming.
Cool.
You should check it out.
Should we go to New York right now? Or
go to New York.
I wish. Oh, sad face. So did you check out Palm Springs last year?
No, but it's on my list. Concept? It's actually on our list.
So good.
Yeah. I figured our algorithm was going to pick it for us at some point, but our random dice generator hasn't picked it yet.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's R-rated, so listeners beware. But I thought it was very entertaining, and so very good picks. So my first pick is all of mine either have a male protagonist or a kind of a male relationship that I think that might help be a gateway, I guess.
Mhm.
And so my first pick is the movie Sing Street. And I don't know if you have ever seen this or heard of it.
I've heard of it, not seen it though.
It's Irish music, right?
Yes,
Am I correct?
it's by director. Yes, it's by director John Carney, and it's basically kind of slightly autobiographical. I don't think it's like super strict, but it's he had a similar experience in growing up in the 80s in Ireland, and he basically is this young kid. He's having to go to this new school. His parents, their relationship is on the rocks, and so he's going to this new school, and he decides that he wants to impress this girl who's a model, and so he tells her that will you be in our music video for our band? Can we hire you? And then he has to create a band because he doesn't have a band.
Classic
And
move.
so he gets a bunch of his friends together to make this band. And it turns out he's really good at songwriting. The songs are so good. The original songs are incredible, and it has also a lot of other 80s songs and tunes. And the relationship between this kid and his older brother, he kind of feels like he kind of let his dreams get put on the back burner so that he could be there to support his siblings, and he just didn't have quite the guts to like go out and leave home and everything. And he's played by Jack Rayner, and he's such a great performance. I really love the relationship between the two brothers, and it's very romantic. It has a very romantic ending, a very hopeful ending, and I just watched it again not that long ago, and I just absolutely love it. I think it's so entertaining, very romantic, very fun, and a great coming of age story.
And
so
music's good.
I think anybody would like it.
Did
Yeah,
they get
the music's really
right?
good.
Who wrote the music for that movie? Was that the director as well?
Yeah, John Carney. And he's done a bunch of musical type movies. He did the movie Once.
Oh,
which is
Once.
Also really good. Yeah, really good. And I can't think of the name, but he did one with Keira Knightley.
Oh, the one with her and Mark Ruffalo, right?
Yeah. And so
all our listeners,
I really recommend
you guys
it.
are rom-com experts. You should know this Keira Knightley movie.
Now. I hear them.
It's my least favorite of his, which is probably why I can't remember it, but it's still worth watching. It's called Begin Again.
Right.
Begin Again. And so Sing Street, it was kind of, it was a Weinstein film, so it got kind of lost in the shuffle with all that nonsense. And also it was the same year as La La Land, and it kind of got also sort of lost in all the hoopla of La La Land. But I prefer it over La La Land myself. I don't hate La La Land, but I just think this is better. And so that's kind of why it maybe people aren't as familiar with it as they should be, but it's a real gem.
Awesome.
Going on our list.
So,
yeah, definitely gotta go on our list.
For sure.
Yes.
Look, you've convinced us already.
Yeah.
Yes.
We just want to take a break from the show just to have a little check-in before we go on in the show. So we actually want to talk about our sponsor for this week, BetterHelp. In 2021, it's definitely okay to talk about your mental health, about your happiness. Humans aren't meant to keep everything inside. It can make us sick, and therapy helps. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now. Maybe you need some tools to help. Maybe you've got stress, insecurity, problems in your relationship, are not dealing well with things going on in your life. And that's what therapy can be.
And whatever you need, don't be ashamed, because normal humans struggle and they start to feel better, and that's okay. It's good to start to feel better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers you video, phone, or a live chat session with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to.
The good thing is BetterHelp is much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join millions of people who are seeing what therapy is really about. See if it's for you, because you are your greatest asset.
So this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Hallmarkies podcasts listeners can get 10% off of their first month of Better at betterhelp.com/Hallmarkies. That's betterhelp.com/Hallmarkies.
Oh, Ryan, what's your number 2?
Okay, the next one I've got is So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought this.
Yeah.
You introduced this movie to me.
Yeah, Mike Myers. He lives in San Francisco, and he falls in love with the butcher, and they eventually get married. And he finds out that, or maybe either before or after the marriage, he finds out that she may be an axe murderer.
Right.
And he's nervous that she murders. No, they haven't gotten married yet. He proposes, but then he finds out that she may be an axe murderer and kills her new husband on their honeymoon nights, and is nervous about Mike getting murdered by her. I like this movie because I love Mike Myers, Wayne's World, Austin Powers, some of my favorite movies, but he's a really charming rom-com protagonist in this film. He's funny and, like I said, charming. I'm just like, ooh, just
You get the feels.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I think you could have not done the like axe murderer part of the film. Like, you didn't have to make it like kooky in that corner, and you could just make it about this guy who's afraid of commitment, which is like what the other 90s rom-coms are about anyways. And it still would have been just a fun movie about this guy romancing this cute butcher. And I just love it.
But it works because like as a gateway film, because it's such a comedy, right?
Oh yeah. And it's
Like-
Mike Myers.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I was
come
just
on.
going to say.
Like I feel like a lot
Yeah.
of our movies have some sort of segue thing being like, okay, you're not interested in romance, but maybe you could be if you laugh a little bit, right?
That's right. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good. I feel like that movie was on like on TBS and TNT and stuff like that, like cable
24/7.
all the time,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If it wasn't Shawshank
So-
Redemption, it was So I Married an Axe
Right.
Murderer.
I think so. So, Kelly, what's your next pick?
Okay, so if we're going chronological, I'm gonna bring out the big guns. This is Sleepless in Seattle. It is one of the most classic rom-coms ever made. Early 90s, 1994, directed by Nora Ephron. So this is going to be kind of my only film directed by a woman. And the thing I like about this one is Tom Hanks as a character is endlessly relatable. Like basically it tells the story on his side of things. Is Tom Hanks is a single dad whose wife has just died, and he makes a move to Seattle, and it's kind of about him starting over. And then he calls his son calls into a radio show that gets broadcast nationally, and all these women all over the United States hear how cool and sensitive and wonderful Tom Hanks is. And one of the people that hears him is Meg Ryan,
Who's a stalker.
It is a little bit of a stalker in the movie, but that's fine because we're in the romance genre. It's
have to go
okay,
with it.
everybody. And the story kind of details about how they end up meeting. It's a story that has very little romance to it. It just has a lot of ideas about romance.
It's fateful romance.
Right. And I think it's one of those good films for men because everybody in the whole world has lost somebody before. And Tom Hanks as a character helps us feel that in a way that is both poignant and vulnerable, but at the same time approachable, because Tom Hanks is the everyman.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think out of all the movies that I've chosen, it may be the most stereotypical 90s rom-com. It's shot in a very particular way. It's got Nora Ephron's hand in it, and she is the queen of rom-coms. And so if you're like looking to get into You've Got Mail or like any of those films that tried to rip off like When Harry Met Sally or Sleepless in Seattle, like this is a good place to start.
And Tom Hanks being in Sleepless in Seattle is so Erin Carlson talks about this in her book that's documents behind the scenes on those movies. In the book, I'll have what she's having. She talks about how Tom Hanks was like really collaborative with Nora Ephron, and a lot of things that were in the script where he had a line and Tom Hanks is like, guys don't do this. Guys, he would put in his 2 cents of, because like on When Harry Met Sally, it was very much a collaboration of like Rob Reiner would like throw in for what the guys are thinking, and Nora Ephron would throw in what the girls are thinking.
Yeah.
And in this, for Tom Hanks, his character is like, he'd be more angry. He'd be like this, he'd be like that. And it was a good time for, I don't know, the male perspective to get, represented by someone as awesome as Tom Hanks.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was going to say, because we haven't had enough representation.
Right.
And nobody writes and nobody writes a script like Nora Ephron. I mean, her scripts were so good. And I mean, she has her flops, but I just love her script so much. And I mean, just like little moments when he's like freaking out about Fatal Attraction. And, and I mean, like, so funny.
I did.
And,
so good.
Yeah. And just little details like when she's peeling that apple.
Yeah.
Getting it all curly.
Perfect.
And he talks about just breathing in, breathing out. And
Bill Pullman
get up every day.
And don't forget Bill Pullman.
Yeah.
Well, and the whole homage to An Affair to Remember,
right,
which is so great. I mean, she's wonderful at doing that, about making her movies about falling in love with the movies. Because obviously you've got Mail, you've got Stop Around the Corner, you have in When Harry Met Sally, you have Casablanca,
right?
That's heavily referenced, and so I love her so much, and her, I think there's been nobody that has. Since she passed away in 2012, I don't think there has been anybody that has kind of taken her throne or become there's nobody that I feel like is the new Nora Ephron.
No, I think
we've yet to get it.
The closest we have is like her cousin, not literally, but like a cousin is Nancy Myers, that I feel like is similar.
Not as good.
No. And it's just kind of like maybe like more like little sister of like, your films are nice. They're not as glorious as Nora Ephron movies, but
the last thing I'm going to say about Sleepless in Seattle before we move away, if that's okay, is that if you're a cynical person, this is actually a good movie to watch. Nora Ephron movies are good movies to watch because she's super cynical herself. And like, if you're like, I don't know how I feel about rom-coms and romance, don't worry. She'll make fun of it with you as you're watching it. Both Harry Met Sally and
agreed.
Sleepless.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your number 2?
Yeah. So my number 2 is actually maybe a surprise to people, but is actually Tangled from Disney.
Hey!
I think it's Disney's first real romantic comedy. I mean, for so long, the princess Prince kind of relationships in Disney movies, you'd have him come in, he's Prince Charming, they dance, they whatever, and they're done. And in this case, Flynn is literally the narrator. Flynn Rider is the lead character, you could argue, in the story. I mean, his arc as far as him becoming Eugene by the end and becoming this new person is as significant as Rapunzel's arc, and their banter between, there's no other, maybe Aladdin would be the only other one that I can think of that has sort of that banter back and forth throughout the whole movie. But they just tend to not do that. And in they have such great chemistry, as weird as that might say to have animated characters have chemistry, but they do. And it's kind of crazy when you know that they even weren't in the same room when they were recording the vocal actors, but it feels like it doesn't feel that way. And it's so funny. It's so well animated. I like the songs. Alan Menken, you can't go wrong with Alan Menken and Glenn Slater songs. And it's just super charming. And I love Mother Gothel. She is such a great villain. It's been really since then that we've gotten like a good juicy villain from Disney, and I miss that. They're all about the sort of surprise reveal kind of villain, as opposed to just someone like Gothel who's just wicked. And so I miss that. And so Maximus is hilarious, and I love it. So yeah,
it's such a, I mean, this isn't necessarily an advertisement to guys, but it's like, it's such a interesting mother-daughter movie because their relationship is so weird and so messed up. And what I like about these movies though, like Tangled, I feel like is pretty equal with its male and female characters of like, boys are going to like Flynn, girls are going to like her. But I felt like as a boy, I'm like, oh, so this is what a complicated not that girls have this relationship where their mom or stepmom needs their hair cut off every day or sung or anything like that, but it's such a unique relationship that other Disney movies haven't really, they're not very deep the way that Tangled gets into
it's
it.
a very toxic relationship, and to make motherhood sort of the manipulative tool of the story was very bold of them, I think. And so it's one of my favorites. I love it.
And it's my brother-in-law, it's one of his favorite movies, and he's a pretty casual movie fan. He's like one of those big MCU movie guys, but he's like, oh, Tangled is the best Disney movie, you guys. And so there you go. It's just like guys do love it.
Yeah, and Flynn saves the day at the end. I mean, by his choice of cutting her hair and what he does, and so yeah, it's really fun. So Ryan, what's your next pick?
Okay, next one is As Good as It Gets, Jack Nicholson. When we did the episode for our podcast, we spent pretty much the entire episode just like detailing the script and like going through all the story beats, and it took us the whole episode to get through the story beats because we had to keep talking about like, and then they did this beat which was so interesting, and then this happened, and there's just so much.
A long movie too.
It's really long, but it's not like Jack Nicholson's...
I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah, it's not like Jack Nicholson's character is one. It's like, yeah, he's the great hero. It's like,
no, he's not a role model in any way.
But what Jack Nicholson characters are ever role models? And I feel like that's part of his, persona in other films where it's like, well, what kind of like complicated character does he play this time? Unless it's not, it's complicated. I wish I could have made a pun out of it's complicated, but he's in Something's Gotta Give. But the same thing happens in Something's Gotta Give, where he's not a classic rom-com hero, and As Good as It Gets, he's the anti-hero.
Well, yeah, I mean he's blatantly racist and homophobic in that film, and so the movie has quite a job of like helping anybody fall in love with him, and that's kind of the whole point of the movie. It's like, how could somebody fall in love with this human?
And it's kind of fun to watch him get his comeuppance. And, Greg Kinnear's character and Helen Hunt's character, there's just so much interesting things going on that I think anyone watching will get their heart melted by these very well-drawn characters.
And it's very stereotypical, like in rom-com form. It has like those lines like, why can't I have a normal boyfriend? And so, if you're not ready for that, this is a good movie to like
ease you into the tropes. Oh, and there's a cute dog.
I can see that. I need to rewatch that.
Everybody loves a cute dog.
Yeah. All right, Kelly, what's your next pick?
Oh, okay. The next pick. Okay, so we're going even deeper into the rom-com genre. Like I'm stepping my toes into the high romance pool here because we're going Notting Hill. Now, you might have heard that people who know rom-coms and said, "Really, Kelly? I can't get a guy to watch this movie ever." And trust me, the first narration, the first time they hear Hugh Grant's sultry, mellifluous tones, they're going to be entranced. Okay, he is a wonder, and he's a very safe protagonist to have. He owns a bookstore. Yeah. Any guy out there is going to lie to you and say, "I don't want to own a bookstore," but really they do. And it's really, honestly, it is a great film. Like, it's written by Richard Curtis, directed by Roger Michel, and it's the first movie we did on our podcast. Mainly, it is kind of a male fantasy, because what happens is Hugh Grant's character as a bookstore owner falls in love with Julia Roberts, who is basically playing Julia Roberts in the movie. She's like the most famous actress in the world, and he falls in love with her, and they have ups and downs. And by the end of the movie, they like kind of, even though they're from two separate worlds, they decide to be in a relationship because love conquers social barriers, I guess.
Indefinitely.
Yeah.
That's a line from the movie.
Yeah, good job.
That's a line from the movie.
And it has such great lines and good characters, and it is funny. And I think more than any other movie that we've brought up so far, it is very prototypical in its rom-comness.
Yeah. But it's like the highest form of the genre form.
Right. Like it is almost like your platonic rom-com. Like if you want something that is both what people think about when they come to rom-coms, but is also of the highest caliber and quality, this is that film.
Yeah. And it
Mhm.
definitely, I think this is
Yeah,
the one
it's-
that melted my heart. I was like, oh, okay, I can get into this. It doesn't have to be, like literate Nora Ephron every time. It can be something warmer and more sentimental.
Have you seen it?
It's a great choice.
Oh, here it comes.
Yes, of course, I've seen it. Yes. No, I love it. And I
Okay.
think it's a great choice. And I think that that it's a good choice as a gateway because of things like the horse and hound scene. And there's some like genuinely really funny moments in the movie. And I also love the whole scene when they're eating dinner, when they're at the birthday party scene.
Yeah.
It just feels so authentic and natural as like real friends sitting and talking and eating brownies and, you know, talking. And I also, it's just like a little detail that I kind of love. I love the fact that the one friend is in a wheelchair and it's just like not a thing. And it's just, she's just,
It's just that she's a character
as
in
it
a
should
movie.
be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. And you never see that. And I really thought that was cool. And it's really fun. It's a very good choice and classic for a reason. So my next choice is also starring Mr. Hugh Grant.
Uh-oh.
And it is About a Boy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
And
yeah.
I think that About a Boy is a good gateway because it has the relationship between the boy and Hugh Grant and Nick Hornby's writing. He's just a great writer. I mean, he's did the book, and you have Rachel Weisz and Toni Collette and you know, great cast. And it's definitely, I think, especially this life of isolation, it's definitely something I can relate to, the way he talks about living life in units of time.
Mhm.
And that's definitely something that I think about all the time as a freelancer, as somebody who that, you know, I've got my spot here and my spot here for doing this and doing this and doing this and doing this. And you kind of have to all make it work out. And so I love the script, and the music is great in it. And the ending is really satisfying when he helps the boy do his song. And
It's killing them softly, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it? That's what he sings at the end. Yeah. It's so good.
And so it's maybe a bit of a stretch just because the romance is like less of an angle as opposed to the relationship between the boy and Hugh Grant, but it's there, and so I think it counts.
Guys are scared off from watching Hugh Grant movies in general because they associate Notting Hill and Four Weddings and what is that?
And
Pregnant
2 weeks
one,
notice.
9 months.
Yeah.
2 weeks notice.
You know,
it's
because they're scared.
They're scared.
They're scared.
But about a Boy is a good like soft, like ease in. It's like not super rom-commy because it's really about the kid, not really about Rachel Weisz as much.
Because I mean, Hugh Grant's pretty much a cad through like half of that movie, right?
He's a cad halfway through his life.
Well, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's like a subtle Christmas movie too.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey,
Yeah.
I love
like
a subtle
those.
Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Yes. So, all right, Ryan, what do you have next?
Okay, next up, I've got Hitch.
Yeah.
I think one of the most financially successful rom-coms.
Number 3 of all time.
Number 3
Yeah.
rom-com. Great.
Mhm.
Good for him.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Will Smith being the like Cupid for
Kevin
James. I think all guys wish we were
had
as
a-
cool as Will Smith, but we all feel like we're Albert Brenneman. And that was a movie that I watched when it came out, and that was way before my rom-com love, but it was such a cultural, like, everyone's jumping in. We're all liking this. It didn't feel like a cheesy Sandy rom-com or a J-Lo rom-com. It felt like a more like inclusive rom-com. I think because Will Smith is there to make it so cool, and it's just really funny. But like, I think guys will just really relate to this feeling of I'm always a dork around girls like Allegra Cole. How do I be cool and smooth, and how am I supposed to dress? And this was also, I'm pretty sure at the same time they had Queer Eye for the Straight Guy on, and that was like one of my go-to shows in like junior high and high school. I'm like, teach me, I need to know. And so like Hitch was like another teacher in the long line of like cool guys.
I like the Ben Kenobi-ness of that film for guys. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good one. And you could say, well, he's being kind of a jerk. He's objectifying women, that all women are like this and all women are. But the thing is, he learns he's wrong. So,
Right.
it doesn't really matter to me. Like, I'm not offended by it in any way. Because
And they hang a
he
lampshade
gets
on that in
his-
the film too.
Yeah, they figure it out.
That's right. All right, Kelly, what's your next one?
Oh yeah. Okay. So, okay. So this was a movie that we did very recently on our show. Ryan and I actually had a lot of the same movies on our lists, and this was one of them. Crazy Stupid Love. Crazy Stupid Love is not too unlike Hitch. Actually, it's another shepherding movie where Steve Carell and his wife in that movie, Julianne Moore. Thank you. They separate at the beginning of the film, and the movie kind of becomes this I don't know, like it kind of becomes a Hitch situation where Ryan Gosling teaches Steve Carell how to have confidence in himself, basically how to care about his own confidence and his own masculinity in a way that he's really not cared about in a very long time, and helps him basically get back with his wife by the end of the film. And it's a movie that offers quite a few different perspectives on romance, because I think very much like Hitch, you can look at the Ryan Gosling character in this film and see a guy who is a little bit of a player, an admitted player.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie doesn't say you're wrong, but it says maybe think about who you are just a little bit more and think about like how you respect people. And like just the dynamics between Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, and one of the Emmas.
Emma Thompson. That would have been a different
Emma Thompson, Emma Watson. There's so many of them.
It's M. Stone.
M. Stone. Thank you. It is really good, and I think it's a good place to come into a film if you're especially like, these aren't the guys that we hang out with, but if you're kind of a club guy, do you think you would watch this movie and be like, oh, I can relate to Ryan Gosling. Maybe I like these movies.
Yeah.
I think if you're a club guy walking into a movie theater, I think you probably got lost. You're in the wrong part of the mall, but stay, watch the movie.
What clubs did you go to?
Oh, no. The movie theater I worked at was across the way from a club. They had really good cheeseburgers. I went there on my lunch break. But every shift I was going home at like midnight. That's when the club started hopping. And I just thought it was comical that this super hip club was meeting in a mall.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. I think it's a good pick. I think anybody can find some character to relate to in that movie. I mean, that's kind of the idea, whether you're relating to Julianne Moore or Emma Stone more, and they all have really good chemistry. And so it's a fun one. It's a little long. I think it's like 2.5 hours long.
That's what we said.
About.
We thought it could have shed a few characters, but
Yeah,
but overall, it's definitely enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your number 4?
All right, my next pick is from the 80s. It's Better Off Dead.
Oh yeah,
and nice. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Oh yeah,
it stars,
we quoted it recently.
Did we? Yeah. Good for us.
It stars John Cusack, and it's obviously about a dude. He gets his heart broken, and he's like obsessed with this woman. And this is a terrible example of actors looking like they are 35, 40 years old playing high school students. So that's like a flaw. But other than that, it's just genuinely really funny. And I mean, ridiculous things like the men who learned to speak English from watching Howard Cosell, The Wide World of Sports, Elaine Myers, man on a mission, and the newspaper delivery kid with his $2, and he's chasing them, and his best friend who's trying to get him to ride in the K9 or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
and he's like, this is pure snow. You know the street value of this stuff. His mom, who's cooking, is just literally walking off of the table.
It's such an absurd comedy.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and his brother who's taking all of the backs of the cereal boxes and mailing all the stuff in for the free stuff, and
All right.
he gets the guide to picking up trashy women.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
It's just so ridiculous. And every time his dad takes the cereal, and like spills on the ground. He's like, "Could you wait until we finish the cereal?" All that is funny. It's just really funny. I mean, humor is super subjective, but it's also a romance that he falls in love with the French foreign exchange student who's learning the international language.
Yeah.
From Ricky. And so it's a romance. It's about getting your heart broken and dealing with it and moving on. And so it's a really funny movie that I don't feel like kind of gets enough credit. Like, I think it's equally as funny, if not more funny, than National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Oh yeah.
And yet, I don't know. I feel like it's you never hear about it really talked about as one of the great comedies of the 80s. But I love it.
I love it too. And I don't, now that you bring it up, is there another actor out there that has had their heart broken in movies more often than John Cusack?
He's got such a heartbreakable face.
Yeah, he has such a good sad face. I'm just thinking of like High Fidelity and
Maybe everybody saw him and Say Anything, and they're like, okay, this
let's
is
make
it.
that guy cry.
We need more of that sad stuff. That sad John Cusack. It works for us.
Yeah. There's even stop motion animation in this movie. I mean, it's just got it all.
Like, it's kind of like, if you liked Airplane, you'll love Better Off Dead. Just like this absurd mile a minute comedy.
I like this detectives board where we just have yarn going from, okay, Airplane, all right, what rom-com? Better Off Dead.
Better Off Dead. Yeah, that sounds right.
I think so. So, all right. So, Ryan, what's your last pick?
So mine's the most obvious of all of them. It's When Harry Met Sally. I mean, you got to give it up. It's the classic of classics. It's the Rolls Royce of rom-coms.
Mm-hmm.
Nora Ephron, Rob Reiner collaborating on the difference between men and women, or maybe not so many differences between men and women, and how you navigate friendships and relationships. And I watched this movie in the midst of college, and I just was laughing so hard because I'm like, finally, someone gets it. Someone understands it. And Harry Burns is just the voice of reason a lot of the time. And, you know, looking back as I grow up, more and more as the years go by, I'm like, Harry is really like not a great person a lot of the time, but he does feel so real and feels so accurate to what guys are. And the movie doesn't really pull its punches. And her with Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal, you wouldn't think Billy Crystal could pull off romantic, but he does romantic here. And he also does romantic in Forget Paris. And that's also a good one,
yeah,
but
for sure.
Not the Rolls Royce. This is the Rolls Royce.
Yeah. Yeah, and it asks an interesting question that can men and women be friends?
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting question. And people just say, well, did they have the right answer? I don't know.
Yeah.
And
so it gives you something to kind of talk about.
And I like that, like that is definitely, it started, I think, more than maybe even Sleepless in Seattle. It started off the wave of new rom-coms just being at the end of the 80s.
I would say historically, When Harry Met Sally is the beginning of a new era that ended in like 2009, 2010.
I think that you have to give credit to Annie Hall.
Yeah.
I think that Annie Hall was probably the first in that kind of wave. And then, because I mean, When Harry Met Sally definitely borrowed a lot from Annie Hall.
Right.
And it's very, very similar in a lot of ways, but it's not as cynical as Annie Hall.
Right. Yeah, and I think in form, like just the way that Rob Reiner directs is kind of like it just feels a little bit more 90s than Annie Hall, where most of Annie Hall's ideas are where we jumped off of for the genre.
Yeah. Very true.
Good pick, man.
All right.
Way to not pick an obvious one there.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, Kelly, your last pick.
Okay, my last pick is it's going to be About Time. Which Ryan, the same guy that you were talking about who really likes Tangled, loves About Time, right?
Yeah.
The This movie is a fantasy film. It's starring Domhnall Gleeson, who you out there might know from Star Wars. He plays
General Hux.
General Hux. But he is a great actor in his own
Hey,
right.
he's a great actor in those Star Wars movies. So
Yeah, he's all right. But I
mean,
really...
Yeah, he's not given much, but yeah.
I really love him in this film. And basically, the conceit of this story is that he is Bill Nighy's son. Nighy.
Mhm.
And all of the men in their family can travel back in time. They basically just go into a dark place and they can come out at whatever time they wish. And it just explores the idea of, if that were possible, what would happen? And this movie catalogs both his relationship with Rachel McAdams, who he's falling in love with over this film, and it's a very sweet romance, and his relationship with his father, and what it means to both lose somebody and gain somebody with this power, and what is most important in life. And this movie is a little bit more existential than most of the films on our list, but it's one of those important movies that I didn't see until very recently, that I wish I would have seen when I was younger, because it allows for like such a positive, important outlook on life that I feel like more people should like aspire to strive for. And I think it'd be good for any young person, but I think it's a really good place for young men to jump on board.
It's got that Field of Dreams vibes where it's not really about the father and son, but it's got this emotional gut punch of father and son storytelling. We're like, ooh. And so it's like all guys agree that like Field of Dreams is one of the great like dude movies, like guy movies, like Field of Dreams. And like him, like Domhnall Gleeson and Bill Nighy has this like Kevin Costner, and I don't know, remember who plays his dad in Field of Dreams.
The movie really wanted me to made me want to go back and watch a Goofy movie.
Yeah, Goofy movie.
Because
any other father-son movies, I think if we had a father and son movie podcast, About Time would be equally represented.
Yeah.
Here's a shocker. I actually haven't seen About Time, and I've had probably
this is great.
Like 5 people in the last couple months literally tell me I got to see About Time. So now I just have to do it.
You know what?
Because I've heard nothing but great things about how good it is. It's about time. Yeah. So, all right. Well, my last choice is The Father of the Bride.
Yes!
Steve Martin.
Yes! One of my all-time favorites.
Yes. I mean, it definitely is up there in one of the best remakes ever made, if not better than the original Spencer Tracy and Elizabeth Taylor.
Sorry, Spencer Tracy.
It's really funny, and I just think that anybody can relate to at least one character in the story. Obviously, like Steve Martin's over the top, and Martin Short is over the top, but not so much that you can't still relate to him. And I love when he has just like sweet moments when he's watching his kids, and he kind of puts his hand over his heart, and he feels it, and you just get the impression that yes, he is over the top, but he also just loves his kids so much, and so it's very endearing. And I think he and Diane Keaton have incredible chemistry. Kimberly Williams Paisley is wonderful. We always laugh in my family because when she freaks out about the blender, my dad had just gotten my mom that blender like for Christmas or something. And so he's like, how could you get that blender? But it works. It's really, really sweet. And it's so ridiculous, this wedding. It's just absurd. But and I like the sequel too. I enjoy it. It's silly, but I like it. And my mom had a baby when I was 18, so I can relate to a little bit that being older and your mom having a baby. And anyway, it's just very charming, and I loved this last summer, the Father of the Bride Part 3-ish.
Yeah,
I don't know if you got to see, if you saw that. It was so good. It was one of the highlights of the summer for me. And so I really love the whole family. And
I'm trying to get my wife to appreciate these movies more, but the first one she thinks is too sad because George Banks misses out on all the big wedding moments, and like my wife feels that too much. she's like, I can't. It's too heartbreaking. I can't watch it. And then I can't get her to watch the sequel because she's like, no, it's weird. It's just weird that they're having the babies at the same time. And
That's
now
what's great about
but
it.
now to be like, it can happen. It's been done.
Yeah. So we put on our Twitter, I put on my Twitter, I asked this question, what are good romantic comedies for men? And I got tons of answers, so I can't read all of them. So forgive us, but I'll read a few. So we have Lassie Vaught. He says, I really kind of love When Harry Met Sally. The Holiday. It's also really fun.
Mhm.
And does Shaun of the Dead count?
That's an important
so-
relationship.
I mean, the whole movie is
Yeah.
about him trying to get her back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, him and
The
his
Winchester.
Yeah.
And he says Notting Hill I really like as well. The Casual Critic, he says Coming to America, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Scott
Mhm.
Pilgrim versus the World,
Oh yeah.
I thought it was
Silver
Scott
Linings
Pilgrim.
Playbook, The Big Sick, Long Shot, and Yesterday. Premier League Champion says I Love You Man,
Oh,
forgetting
yeah.
Sarah Marshall's 17 Again, Mr. Right, Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and Yes Man.
Mhm.
Kirk Sever says Sideways, The Wedding Singer, Big
Mhm.
Trouble in Little China, which
Okay.
um, Sabrina, which I love both of those
Yeah.
movies, To Catch a Thief.
Oh yeah.
Ann Scott, our coach, she says, my husband likes This Means War, Hitch, and Crazy Stupid Love.
There you go.
Ren Geekness, he says The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Long Shot, Yesterday, Silver Linings Playbook, The Girl Next Door, Easy A, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
yeah. Our friend Jen Johans, she says, depends on the guy, but man, if a dude doesn't at least enjoy A Fish Called Wanda or When Harry Met Sally, trust me, he's no fun to be around.
Yeah. And the other honorable mention I want to give is, and I'll put it this way: any movie that is considered too girly, I will say that's malarkey. Go watch it anyways, because if you do watch it and think this is a girly movie, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you get to understand how girly girls think. Maybe you get to get a perspective that's not
true.
yours. And that's what I've been enjoying
right.
about these movies, that we'll encounter some movies that it's like, I wouldn't normally go there, even being a rom-com fan. I wouldn't check this movie out, but I'm glad I did, because I got to see another side of women that I didn't previously get to see before.
And I already know everything about women, so that's
Yeah,
all.
he's already there. He's good. So,
well, there are so many on this. I can't even begin to I can believe the responses that I got. So hopefully I'll put a link in the description if you want to check out the Twitter thread. Then you totally
we'd
should.
love to.
But
We're always trying to expand our list.
This has been so much fun. I would definitely have you both back again.
Yeah, we'd love
This is
to.
great. And so why don't you tell people where they can find your content, your podcast?
Well, you can find us on any of the normal podcatchers, whatever you listen to. We're on there. We're at Rom-Com Gents on Facebook and Instagram. We are as well on Twitter. And I was reminded that we have a Twitter today because you
probably
tweeted
shouldn't
at
have
us.
We should probably get rid of that.
But we
Twitter.
haven't posted on it in
used
like 8 months. But you can also, we have an email that you can write to us at. It's romcomgents@gmail.com.
We kind of have two names. We're the Rom-Com Gents, but the name of the podcast is A Gentleman's Guide to Rom-Coms. So
But you can find us by searching for either on your podcast.
you should be able to find it. And it's Gentlemen's, MENS, not man's. We're not talking about the theoretical man. We're the gentlemen.
Yeah,
And
we are the two gentlemen.
we're trying to hold ourselves to that standard. We're trying to be gentlemen.
But I fixed the algorithm, so if you just want to search Rom-Com Gents, it's right there.
Find us, follow us. I post things
Well, great.
on the daily on the Instagram if you want a fun rom-com account to follow.
And that's
Great.
that's us.
Definitely follow them. And I'll have all the information in the description. People can check it out.
Aw,
and you can
thanks.
find me at Rachel's Reviews all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So make sure to check that out. And also make sure you're following the podcast, Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all over social media. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings or reviews for both of our podcasts. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate that. And we also have our patron group, which is really fun. And we have our watch-alongs and other activities, and it's a lot of fun. So check that out. And we also have our merch store, which has tons of fun romance-inspired merch. So make sure to check that out. All the information is in the description. Yes. And thank you so much again for coming. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk to y'all later.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.